In the opening scene of Once Upon a Time in the West, Jack Elam didn't just act, he became the Western itself. But what most fans don't know is that he paid a heavy price for that role, professionally, physically, and emotionally. In today's video, you'll discover a lot about him, including why his involvement in the greatest opening moment in Western TV history cost him everything. But do you think Jack Elam was one of the greatest character actors of all time? Comment 1 for yes, 0 for no, and let us know which of his roles you'll never forget. So why did this occur? So, what has he lost? You will comprehend everything at the end of the video. The iconic role made he lost everything. Jack Elam's legendary performance in the opening sequence of Once Upon a Time in the West in 1968, widely regarded as one of the best Western entrances in movie history, remains a high point in his career. Elam was famous as one of 3 hired shooters who waited at a barren rail station for Charles Bronson's enigmatic harmonica character. The sequence is known for its slow-building suspense, wordless performances, and Sergio Leone's characteristic technique of combining broad, sweeping landscapes with close-up shots of the actor's expressive expressions. This performance secured Jack Elam's status in Western cinema, but it came at a great cost. Both professionally and psychologically, Jack Elam's role on Once Upon a Time in the West was brief but memorable. The first scene, which lasts around 10 minutes, depicts Elam and 2 other actors in a standoff as they await the arrival of a train. Leone's dramatic close-ups allow each man to exhibit his uniqueness. Elam's glaring eyes and scruffy manner made him stand out, even if he didn't talk. His weathered visage and pronounced lazy eye gave his character a raw edge that complemented the film's harsh, brutal setting. Leone's camera lingered on Elam's face, highlighting his distinct eye, which had long been a defining feature of his identity. Elam's crossed eye, inflicted by an injury as a youngster, became an important aspect of his on-screen persona. His looks provided a dimension of terror, comedy, or unpredictability to his performances, making him a popular choice for westerns and villain parts. Elam's portrayal in this sequence became cinematic history because to the juxtaposition of quiet, the sounds of the creaking windmill, and the increasing tension. Despite receiving enormous praise for his portrayal in Once Upon a Time in the West, Elam paid a professional price for this famous part. The film, and this sequence in particular, became so synonymous with him that he was typecast in similar parts for the remainder of his career. Elam had previously spent decades playing minor roles in westerns and comedies, but his performance in Leone's film solidified his reputation as a scary, rough-edged character actor. Though appreciated by genre fans, Elam's typecasting limited the breadth of jobs he was offered, making it harder for him to pursue more broad acting chances. Elam's career after Once Upon a Time in the West continued to flourish, but it was primarily limited to the Western genre. While he was unquestionably a virtuoso of playing cowboys, outlaws, and comic relief characters in Westerns, the fact that Hollywood pigeonholed him into these parts meant he missed out on opportunities to play more nuanced, varied characters outside of the genre. The Western era of the 1950s and 1960s was coming to an end, and as demand for these films fell, so did his chances of landing a prominent role. Elam's unique eye has always been a blessing and a burden. We must go back in time to understand why his eye was the way it is. A horrible accident made a legend. Elam lost sight in his left eye in a sad childhood accident when a fellow youngster hurled a pencil at him, piercing his eye. The injuries resulted in a permanently crossed eye and decreased eyesight, which he used to his advantage in his acting career. His odd look set him distinctive in Hollywood, providing him an advantage when playing villains, henchmen, and colorful supporting roles. However, Elam has expressed his dissatisfaction with how his eye became the distinguishing characteristic of his career. He was usually cast in roles that emphasized his menacing look above his acting abilities. Despite his talent for humor and more lighter parts, Elam rarely got the opportunity to showcase that side of himself. Directors sometimes exploited his eye as a visual shortcut to create a distinctive, tough, or quirky persona while overlooking more nuanced performances. Furthermore, the emphasis on his eye and gruff look tended to conceal his genuine acting abilities. Elam was well known among colleagues for his professionalism, sense of humor, and extensive knowledge of the Western genre. He collaborated with great filmmakers like Sergio Leone and John Sturges, and co-stars praised his ability to create distinctive characters with little speech. However, Much of his fame in Hollywood is based on his physical looks rather than his complete range as an actor. Success. But it ruined him. From that point forward, he was the outlaw, the villain, the insane threat at the end of a dusty path. Hollywood no longer viewed Jack Elam as a man. They only saw the ghost of that train station, which accompanied him through every audition and frame that came after. It was unfair. Elam had great range. He had better comic timing than most established comedians. He had a tenderness in his voice when the job called for it, and a delicacy in his heart that was rarely given the opportunity to grow on film. However, after a period in the West, those prospects dried up, much like the dry regions he frequented in fiction. He tried. God knows he tried. Initially, he welcomed the villainy. After all, it was work, and for a guy who had grown up impoverished during the Great Depression, labor was never taken for granted. He leaned into the grunts, sneers, and unshaven roughness. He did it so brilliantly that many began to question whether the man was anything other than a villain. But Elam aspired to be more than a blinking warning flag. He had spent years before the big break working as an accountant, a Navy serviceman, and a bookkeeper at Bank of America. He understood the significance of hard effort and patience. He understood the agony of being neglected. Despite proving himself to filmmakers such as Sergio Leone and John Sturges, and receiving acclaim from co-stars for his ability to create unique characters with a single glance or gesture, he found himself trapped in a prison of vision. By the 1970s, Westerns were becoming obsolete. The golden age was coming to an end, and with it, the steady stream of criminal parts began to diminish. Jack had constructed his home on sand, and the sea was rising. His duties became less and fewer. His name slipped down the credits. But that awful sequence, 10 minutes of perfection, stuck with him. Perhaps the cruelest irony of all was the one characteristic that had previously set him apart, his eye. He'd had a damaged eye since boyhood. The same eye that led casting directors to exclaim, "Yes, he's perfect," while inadvertently closing the door to softer, funnier, or more emotional roles. It became his calling card, his curse, a twisted sign of fate, a wound that opened a door only to slam shut again. By the conclusion of his career, Elam was deeply frustrated. But not with his colleagues. He enjoyed the camaraderie on film sets, respected the directors, and was popular with both cast and crew. He was friendly, professional, and self-aware, with a quick wit and anecdotes that could captivate an audience. But on the inside, he carried the agony of a man who knew he had more to give, who had waited decades to be noticed, only to be overlooked when the limelight did find him. The saddest part is that everyone who worked with him understood the truth. They recognized brilliance, emotional depth, and inventiveness behind the squint and scowl. They knew Jack Elam could have portrayed the wise grandpa, the lovable rogue, or the wounded hero seeking atonement. But Hollywood never asked him to. His legacy, while rich and famous, is unfinished. The world recalls the wild eye, the gravelly voice, and the criminal waiting on the platform. But those who knew Jack Elam, the genuine Jack Elam, recall something else. They recall a guy who bore the burden of being misunderstood with quiet courage, who smiled through disappointment, who gave his best to every part, even those that boxed him in, and who, through it all, never ceased enjoying the craft. Yes, he portrayed the villain, but he was much more than that. He was one of the decent guys. So, did Jesus live a life without controversy or perfection? Let us find out. Controversies. Given that Jack Elam was nearly always cast as the evil figure, the outlaw, the crook, or the killer with the twitching eye and unsettling grin, it's easy to believe that controversy trailed him like a shadow. To some extent, it did, but not in the manner most people would assume. The uproar surrounding Elam was not caused by a scandal or inappropriate behavior. It was more sinister. It existed in preconceptions, cliches, and the awful constraints of being typecast in an industry that valued you solely for the evil you could play. Many people perceived Jack Elam as a character rather than a man. His lazy eye, the product of a childhood mishap, served as both his hallmark and his disgrace. While it helped him stand out and get jobs in the Western genre, it also limited him. Hollywood has long been a place where image is paramount, and Elam's looks often led to him being classified as a nasty person. Producers repeatedly regarded him as a threat, an untrustworthy vagrant, a dishonest deputy, never a hero or a heartthrob. This limited perspective lost him many doors that were closed before they were actually opened. And, despite his innate charisma, intellect, and unexpected gentleness underneath the gruff appearance, he carried a secret sadness for the most of his career. Elam knew he was more than just the sneering sidekick, but he also knew the game's rules, so he leaned in. He gave those jobs all he had, even when they came with baggage, scripts that required him to portray stereotypes or, worse, to say lines that represented a harsh and outmoded perspective of indigenous people or other oppressed groups. These experiences plagued him. Elam was not a bigot. In reality, many who knew him behind the scenes characterized him as a gentleman with a strong sense of justice and morality. However, given the characters he portrayed, he was frequently called upon to portray brutality. He delivered a convincing performance, maybe too convincingly for some. In the public view, the distinction between the actor and the character became increasingly blurred over time. Everyone anticipated the worst. They mistaken the parts for men. There was more that baffled folks. Elam lived a solid life before becoming an actor. He served in the United States Navy during World War II and worked as an accountant, which was a solid and respected profession. He was adept with mathematics and had previously managed racetracks. So when he abandoned everything to pursue the unpredictable and risky world of acting, particularly playing Hollywood's most loathed characters, others questioned his judgment. Why would a combat veteran and accountant want to be the face of villainy in American cinema? It didn't help that some critics accused Elam of propagating harmful cultural stereotypes through his performances, especially in an age when Westerns frequently simplified or misrepresented Native Americans and other groups. Despite the fact that he had little control over these decisions as an actor, they wounded him personally. Elam addressed these problems and attempted to utilize his power to promote better, more intelligent storytelling. However, many of his characters lacked subtlety. They were designed to be disliked. He completed the work for which he was recruited, even though it weighed heavily on his conscience. Despite everything, Jack Elam remained popular in the industry. He never sought to hide his history or change himself to satisfy others. His appearance exuded respect, and his friendships reflected loyalty. He was well-liked, if not revered, by his peers, actors, directors, and crew members alike for his candor, sense of humor, and the distinct spark he provided to every set he came into. He was an outsider who had somehow found his way among the stars, and he never forgot how unlikely his accomplishment had been. But time, as it does for everyone, caught up with him. By the late 1990s, Elam was experiencing major health issues. Initially, he tried to power through them. After all, he was accustomed to pushing through pain and rejection, but his body had different intentions. He gradually receded from the spotlight, not bitterly, but gracefully. He knew a chapter was coming to an end, so he gently bowed out, leaving behind a path of great parts and a lifetime's worth of lessons learned the hard way. What pained him the most was the misunderstanding, the ones who saw only the sneer and not the soul, who mistook the character for the man. But those closest to Jack Elam knew the truth about his gruff voice. The misaligned eye and villain's mask represented a guy who had never ceased striving to be greater than the roles he portrayed. Maybe that's what made his narrative so relatable. He was a man who was continually trying to balance perception and reality. Villains and heroes, actor and advocate. A guy whose journey was fraught with inconsistencies and complexities, but who, despite it all, never ceased turning up, performing, or believing that he was more than the world expected of him. Way to stardom. He became known for his wild and unpredictable appearance, which became his trademark. It was an uncomfortable and alluring characteristic that casting directors could not ignore. In spite of this, he did not immediately begin using his acting skills. As a matter of fact, Jack Elam's journey to prominence was not paved with scripts and stage lights and other such things. It was stacked with calculators and ledgers on every side. After completing his studies at Santa Monica Junior College, he started working as a bookkeeper and eventually established himself in a position at Bank of America. He moved into accounting for film firms, even handling the books at Hollywood Park Racetrack. Thanks to his exceptional ability for numbers, he was able to become successful in this field. Producers and executives from studios were among those he intersected with. On the other hand, although he appeared to be content behind the scenes, something within him got increasingly heated with each passing day. It dawned on Jack that he was not suited to work behind a desk. It was not for the fame or the money that he wanted to be an actor. Rather, he believed that he had the ability to bring characters to life in a way that no one else could. As a result, he took risks that very few others would have been willing to take. A demanding actor, he stormed into the office of mega-producer Samuel Goldwyn and demanded a job in the entertainment industry. There was something about Jack that was unfiltered, stunning, and unforgettable, despite the fact that Goldwyn may have laughed him out of the room. The gamble, the boldness, was successful. He made his acting debut in the low-budget murder thriller She Should Have Said No, 1949, which was released in 1949. It was a small part, a drop in the vast ocean that is Hollywood. Yet it had a significant influence on the industry. It was that one rough-edge performance that attracted the eye of casting agencies, and Jack rapidly became a familiar figure in films that required a little bit of risk, a little bit of crazy, and a lot of character. Throughout the 1950s and beyond, Bill and Star saw a rise in popularity that was rather quick. His cameo in High Noon, in which he supported your neighborhood sheriff by providing scene-stealing humor and creating genuine suspense, was one of his most notable performances. Once Upon a Time in the West, when he played a gunman in a scene that became a masterclass in cinematic tension, is one of the most memorable performances that he has ever made. Jack Elam came to be seen as the personification of both charm and chaos. Whether he was playing drunken gunslingers, dishonest deputies, or grizzled old-timers, he had an extraordinary ability to strike a balance between dangerousness and fun in his performances. Depending on how he was acting, he could either make you laugh or make your skin crawl. Not only was it his physical look, but it was also the quality of soul that he imbued into each identity. Jack was just as remarkable when he was not on film. It was well acknowledged that he has a sense of humor, was honest, and was completely devoted to his family and friends. The majority of those who knew him characterized him as a good-natured individual who never forgot his origins. Despite the fact that he had a propensity to portray villains, because of his remarkable ability to combine humor and hostility, he quickly became a fan favorite among the audience. Elam's ability to raise even little roles to legendary stature made it possible for the world to comprehend that regardless of where he is cast, he will give two things: a wonderful performance and a significant amount of money. Before we get into how a certain scenario influenced his life, let's first get to know the girls he became engaged with. If you enjoy lost tales and secret Hollywood facts, please subscribe and touch the bell. We have more tales like this coming up, and believe us, you will not want to miss them. Marriages. Do you have any clue how many times he has been married during his life? He got married twice. He was introduced for the first time to Janelle Hodger, whom he had married in 1937 and remained with till a terrible catastrophe took place. He was linked to Janelle Hodger in a marriage. The city of Los Angeles, California, where Jack and his future wife lived, was the place where they first met. The couple made the decision to get married on August 24, 1939, in Las Vegas, Nevada, when they came to the realization that they were intended to be together. Due to the fact that Jake was such a vile person, they anticipated that their lives would be filled with disappointment. Yet, they astonished everyone by having a happy life. They welcomed their first child, a son whom they called Scott Elam, whom they welcomed on November 23, 1940. After that, in January of 1943, they became parents to a young lady of the name Jerry Elam. The two of them had children together at the same time. A horrible event took place after this wonderful marriage had been going on for 24 years. It was in 1961 when Jean passed away, and she was 41 years old. She was laid to rest in Lakewood Memorial Park. Please accept our apologies for not being able to provide you with any further information on their life together. Despite this, the vast bulk of information on their lives was concealed from the public. Later on in same year, when Elam was still in mourning over Jean's passing, he became acquainted with Margaret M. Jennison. As a result of the fact that they shared similar experiences and provided support to one another, they were able to develop a close connection with one another. They made the decision to be married later that year, which helped to enhance their love for one another as they got closer together. The marriage between Jack and Margaret lasted for 42 years until another significant event had placed, which we shall further discuss in the following paragraphs. Upon the arrival of their daughter on March 3, 1945, the couple decided to give her the name Jacqueline Elam. In addition to that, the couple is parents to a single newborn child. There was no hesitancy on Margaret's part when it came to accepting her duty as a wonderful stepmother to Jack's children from his former marriage. Do you know what the hilarious aspect is? At the time, The majority of people were participating in extramarital affairs or had their marriages ended. These individuals were in charge of presenting the personalities of clever persons and champions of justice on the big screen. On the other hand, we had this lethargic male factor who used to kill, beat, and rape women. But he was actually the nicest person you could ever meet. Throughout his work career, no instances of disloyalty or infidelity have been documented. He was recognized for treating his female co-stars with the utmost respect, which benefited him throughout his career. He could perform in nearly every genre, but authors and spectators always preferred him in evil roles. And to be honest, we were never disappointed with him. He was able to perform in practically any genre. Jack's portrayal of these rogues, gunslingers, and unscrupulous henchmen was so convincing that real-life criminals looked up to him as a role model. One of his best-known early appearances was as a thug waiting at a train station for famed robber Frank Miller to arrive. High Noon, released in 1952, was the picture in which he received significant notice for his performance. Elam ensured that his foreboding presence would leave an indelible impression on the viewers. Despite the fact that the part was just a paragraph long, we saw that as he established himself in history, he began to appear more frequently, but he was not alone. People admired him because he had worked with well-known Western actors like John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, and James Garner. The public began to compare him to these superstars as a result of his frequent appearances beside them. His roles in Western films, including The Man from Laramie in 1955 and Gunfight at the OK. Corral in 1957 helped him establish himself as a famous personality of the 1950s. Elam's characters were despised by the audience because to his ability to capture the savage and untamed spirit of the frontier. This talent made him a fan favorite. Consider if you are so skilled that your fans dislike you and maybe find you disgusting. This was his major purpose, and he succeeded admirably. As a result, if he was well known for his villainous roles, when did he begin to get recognition for his humorous performances? Elam's experimentation with new facets of his acting began in the late 1960s. In truth, he continued to portray villains in westerns, but he was progressively shifting to comic roles where he could display his lovable comedic abilities and deadpan delivery. He received considerable notoriety for his humorous talents, which led to an increase in the number of options available in the Western genre. Support Your Local Sheriff, a Western spoof released in 1969, featured him in one of his most memorable comedic appearances to date. Within the context of this performance, he played Jake, an alcoholic and clumsy member of the community. He was much more popular now, with the audience wanting him to act in more comedy flicks. As a result, he continued to thrive in comedy roles in movies like Support Your Local Gunfighter, 1971, and The Apple Dumpling Gang Rides Again. Elam had already established himself as a well-known character on television, having been in a number of popular series throughout the period. Several television shows, including The Twilight Zone, Gunsmoke, The Rifleman, and Bonanza, frequently featured him as a guest star. Elam was at the zenith of his career, but did the frenzy around him last forever? Check it out. However, the level of buzz he was experiencing lasted just a short time since he was getting increasingly famous. He had his longest-running television appearance in 1974's sitcom The Texas Wheelers, as Zach Wheeler, a slow and irritated father of 4 children. This was his longest-running televised appearance till that moment. Despite the fact that the show only aired for 8 episodes and was canceled, it was of such high quality that it became cult. Death. When people learned that Jack Elam had gone away on October 20th, 2003, at the age of 82, they were shocked and devastated. They were shocked and heartbroken. Despite the fact that they had been anticipating his passing, they were nonetheless shaken to their core by the news of his passing. In addition, we prepared you for this item by informing you that Jack's second marriage to Margaret had ended, and that the reason for the breakup was Jack's tragic death. This information was sent to you in order to prepare you for this item. Jack Elam was believed to have been in possession of around $2 million at the time of his passing. According to estimates, the cause of death was determined to be congestive heart failure, which brought a quiet conclusion to a life that had, on the whole, been anything but peaceful. Jack had, for the most part, avoided the scrutiny of the public and lived his life away from the limelight throughout his final years. After a career that spanned more than half a century and included more than 250 parts in films and television programs, he deserved to take some time off and rest. The last years of his life were spent in calm with his family, away from the commotion of Hollywood and tucked away in the beauty and quiet of the lush hills of Oregon. During his stay there, the guy who had previously gained fame for his roles as bandits, shooters, and grizzled outlaws were able to have a peaceful existence surrounded by the people he cherished. Although the news of his passing did not make headlines in the same way that a blockbuster premiere would, it did send shockwaves through the hearts of generations of moviegoers and other performers who were aware of the contributions he had made to the American film industry. As a result of the outpouring of adulation, a great number of individuals recalled his remarkable eyes, gravelly voice, and unparalleled presence on film. Those who had a close relationship with him recalled his compassionate nature, his hilarious sense of humor, and the fact that he never failed to make time to encourage younger artists who were still trying to find their footing. The legacy of Jack Elam, on the other hand, did not end there. Despite the fact that he passed away at a location that was far removed from the sets and sound stages where he established his name, a spectator is observing more than just a character when they watch a classic Western and see wild-eyed bandits walk into frame. This is because their eyes are drawn to the characters. The reason for this is that the outlaw possesses both a dangerous and a mischievous character. They are coming to see Jack, the little boy who couldn't get enough time with his mother, the man who broke into Hollywood with nothing more than a crooked glance and a dream, and the actor who transformed a childhood injury into a ticket to immortality. All of these people are going to be there. The manifestations of Jack Elam were not restricted to the realm of fiction. He was a genuine figure. Furthermore, the story continues to be cherished by fans even after it has been told. Legacy. Though Jack Elam may have been typecast after Once Upon a Time in the West, his performance in the film cemented his place as a Western hero. The character established the idea of the grizzled, deadly criminal, and his performance in the opening sequence is still considered one of the most iconic in Western cinema. While the film's popularity may have limited Elam's professional options, it also cemented his position in Hollywood history. Elam is still well remembered by aficionados of classic Westerns. His striking visage, with that iconic eye, remains synonymous with the greatest of the genre. He worked well into the 1980s, appearing in television series, comedies, and Westerns, all while keeping the image he had developed over the years. Despite the typecasting and personal hardships, Jack Elam relished his place as a Western legend, knowing that his contribution to the genre would be remembered long after his final on-screen appearance. In the end, Jack Elam's presence in Once Upon a Time in the West may have lost him the opportunity to break free from typecasting, but it also provided him with a measure of film immortality. The cost he incurred was significant, yet his enduring influence was evident. For moviegoers, his portrayal of rough, wild-eyed individuals defines the essence of the Western, cementing Jack Elam's place in American film history. Jack Elam didn't need a hero's lines or a romantic subplot. He made silence scream. He made stillness terrifying, and he paid the price to do it willingly, proudly, and without a single complaint. Do you think modern actors could handle what Elam did in those brutal Western shoots? Let us know in the comments. And which Western actor do you want us to cover next? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a classic Hollywood deep dive.